Shalom, it's Levi Shore. Welcome back to Swing Good Torah. So we have an amazing Parsha Vayishlach. And Bezrat Hashem, today, if you stick around, we're going to hopefully learn some amazing secrets of the Torah and secrets of the world events that are starting to unfold before our eyes right now. There's a lot to get to, so hopefully I can keep this all in some kind of organization. But there's a couple concepts that I think it's possible a lot of Jewish people aren't familiar with. So I want to try to go really slow through some of these concepts and really explore them because some people may be hearing it for the first time. But in this week's Parsha, the Vilna Gaon, he's going to talk about conditions right before the coming of Mashiach. And I think, I don't know exactly, Hashem only knows exactly when it's going to happen, but I think we may be getting very, very close. And the events unfolding right now in the war of Israel and Hamas, a lot of these events are starting to unfold. We're seeing miraculous things, like the Biden administration sent these carrier strike groups to the Middle East, and I think they sent a nuclear sub. So these are big events unfolding. Iran, who has all their proxy groups, so they have like Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and of course Hamas in Gaza. And they're kind of like pulling the strings behind all this. We also have Russia, forgotten kind of by the world right now, but fighting this war against Ukraine. And it may be, the Vilna Gaon said some also interesting things he passed down with students, that it may be that Russia may eventually destroy Ukraine and possibly will at some point invade Constantinople, or now it's called Istanbul. So you would say, well, wait a second, why would he possibly do that? So you have to remember that the history of Constantinople, it was founded by Emperor Constantine, who moved his capital from Rome to the east in modern-day Turkey, and he founded the city of Constantinople, and that became later like the Eastern Roman Empire. So the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire. And it's possible that Vladimir Putin and Russia now is the modern day version of the Eastern Roman Empire of Edom, and then America, the USA, is the strength and the power of the Western Roman Empire that used to be, was founded in Rome itself, in Italy, and then we have the descendants of Ishmael, the Arab powers, and then we have Persia, Iran. We have all these things coming together, and we're going to see a lot of it in this week's Parsha. And the Vilna Gaon is going to say incredible things. And we're going to learn about this group called the Erev Rav and how dangerous they are. And this starts getting into the realm of secrets of the wizarding world, secret societies. We're going to delve into it all today. And, I think you guys will find it interesting if you stick around. So in this week's Parsha, Chazal, the Torah commentators, the Rebbeim, the great Rebbeim from all generations, they see in this week's Parsha of the time that we're in exactly right now, of coming out of this Golus, what's called Golus Edom, the Roman exile. And I believe we are exactly in the year 2023. It's been 2023 years of this Roman exile, and we're very close to coming out of it. And this, in the Parsha, we see Yaakov, we see Jacob, and he's coming with his two wives and the two maidservants and all their 11 children, because Benjamin hasn't been born yet. So we see 11 of the 12 tribes. And now they're heading back to Eretz Yisrael. They're heading back to the land of Israel, and they're heading out of the exile, and they're heading into the Gula. It's the return of the Jewish people to Israel, and it's called the ingathering of the exiles, and this is a big part of the Geula, the redemption. And by the order that Yaakov puts everyone in, the Vilna Gaon, he learns some incredible things about this. So he says, he looks at the pasuk. So I think it's in Parsha Vayishlach. It's in Bereshis, Lamed Gimel Beis. So in English, that's going to be the book of Genesis, and it's verse chapter 33, and it's verse 2. And he sees, it says, Vayasem es hashafachos ve'es yaldehem. And it means, so Yaakov, it means, and he placed the maidservants and their children first. Rishona, first. So the Vilna Gaon, in his Sefer Evan Shlema, he sees something incredible in this. He says this is going to be the condition in what's called the period of the Ichvos Mashiach, the footsteps of the Mashiach, of the Messiah. And he's saying that this represents the maidservants and the children. So the maidservants were Bilhah and Zilpah, and they were the half-sisters of Rachel and Leah, of Rachel and Leah. So who were they? So they were all daughters of Lavan, and Lavan was the brother of Rivka, of Rebekah, who was married to Yitzhak, who was married to Isaac. And Lavan had a wife, and the Torah doesn't tell us much about his wife because it seems like she had passed away from last week's parsha when Yaakov comes and marries Leah and Rachel. And she had passed away, but the wife gave birth to Leah and Rachel and Leah, Rachel and Leah. And then he had a Pelegish, a concubine. So it was a wife, but it wasn't a full marriage where there was no kasuba, there was no dowry. It's a strange concept. I mean, it's a very strange concept. But it was like a maidservant, and then her children were Bilhah and Zilpah, and then Lavan made them maidservants to Rachel and Leah, to Rachel and Leah. So Bilhah and Zilpah, it says, like in a lot of the Midrashim, and that Yaakov, that they were freed from their status of a maidservant by their half-sisters, by Rachel and Leah, and all of them became Gioris, all of them became converts, and in a sense they all had equal status, and they were all married to Yaakov, and that's why the 12 Shvatim, the 12 tribes, they all have equal status. So there's not this lower status. They all have equal status. Now the Vilna Gaon, he saw something different in it, relating to our time right now. And it's a lot. We're going to get to eventually God's and Hamas and all of it, believe it or not, in current events. But what the Vilna Gaon saw in this is, he said that this represented the Erev Rav. And when it says Rishona, he's saying that in these days we live in, that the Erev Rav is going to be the leaders of the Jewish people. And we're going to talk more about exactly who they are, where they come from in the Torah, and what they are. But it's very, very scary concept, because it means that the political leaders in Israel, the political leaders of the Jewish people in America and all around the world, and what's even scarier, and this is the scariest part about it, and there will be even leaders in the Torah world, and they'll all be part of the Erev Rav. And in this time we live in. So so the Vilna Gaon said, like, this was back in his days, and that's hundreds of years ago, and Chas v'shalom, but I think it's like so much scarier now. Because like in the days of the Vilna Gaon, you had the Vilna Gaon, you had the Baal Shem Tov, you had great great Talmidei Chachamim, great Torah scholars, great tzaddikim. But even in their days, hundreds of years ago, even back then they didn't see themselves as the complete leaders of the Jewish people, which is a scary concept. And Chas v'shalom, what is it like now? With all the Yeridas Adoros, with all the spiritual, decrease of each generation. So then the next part of the pasuk of the verse, it says, V'es Leah v'yaladecha acharonim. So then it means that next is Leah and her children after them. They're like after the Rosh, the leaders, the Rishona, who are the leaders, which the Vilna Gaon is saying the Erev Rav, and next comes Leah and her children. So what does the Vilna Gaon say about this? He says something interesting. He says, Haim ha'amei ha'aretz hatovim. So he's saying these are the good. It literally means people of the land. But what it means is, and he's saying they're good. But what he's saying is, these are the simple, good Jewish people. And unfortunately, through hundreds and hundreds of years of the Enlightenment, like where we've gone to public school, we've gone to like colleges and universities, and we haven't been brought up. Like I'm a Baal Teshuvah, I went to public school, so a lot of us haven't been brought up, in the yeshivas and the whole yeshiva world. And in some ways, like we don't have such a great knowledge of the Torah. Like we we were taught secular subjects in school and college and university, and Torah in some scary way is a little bit foreign to us. But he's saying, but Leah and her children represent like the good Jewish people that maybe don't have a lot of Torah knowledge, but they're after the Erev Rav, and they're after the leaders. And I think what we start to see now is, what I think we're starting to see happening is, we're starting to see a separation between the Erev Rav and the Jewish people. And there's Jewish people that may not know a lot about the Torah, but you see after October 7th, you see after this massacre on Simchas Torah on Shabbos, you see the Jewish neshama, the Jewish souls waking up. And I've seen interesting things. I've seen, like, in Hollywood, you see actors like Michael Rappaport and Deborah Messing and Amy Schumer. And I don't know, I don't know how religious or not religious they are. They don't maybe seem like they're so religious and maybe have such a vast knowledge of Torah, but you can see the Jewish soul, like in them, is like starting to awaken, and they feel, and you see Jewish people are starting to feel more part of the whole Jewish people again, from all sides. But what's fascinating is when there was that big rally. Well, here, let's get to the end, then we'll talk about the rally for a second. So then, the final part of the pasuk says, "Ve'es Rachel, ve'es Yosef acharonim," and then at the very end is Rachel and is Joseph at the end, at the very back of all the wives and the maidservants and all the children. And the Vilna Gaon said in Sefer Evan Shlema, he said that these are the Talmidei Hachamim. These are the great Torah scholars, and they're like lowest of all. And then we'll talk about Yosef, and we'll talk about how Joseph relates to Mashiach ben Yosef, and he's going to be part of this low group, part of this group of, like, not the leaders of the Jewish people right now. He's hidden, and he's among the Talmidei Hachamim, and he's he's learning Torah probably somewhere, hopefully in some yeshiva around the world. But we see, like, the image of Mashiach coming, probably Mashiach ben Yosef, like he's going to be a poor man riding on a donkey, very humble, not a billionaire, not a leader of the Jewish people, just hidden and at the back, right? And we saw this during the rally in Washington, D.C. While it was a tremendous thing, and we had Jews starting to come back from all different parts of the Jewish people, and we had this great unity. But we saw something very interesting. We didn't see any of the great Rebbeim, the great Roshei Yeshivas, get up and talk. It was all basically politicians and musicians and just simple, average, everyday Jewish people, maybe leaders, but not the great Roshei Yeshivas. They were not invited. They're not invited to speak. So it's fascinating because they're at the back, at the end. And then there is this scary concept, because it's a very scary time, because in all different groups of Jews, the leaders are going to be the Erev Rav. We'll talk about who they are. But it's very confusing. It's very confusing to a lot of Jewish people that are starting to wake up and maybe beginning the process of teshuvah, of return to Hashem's Torah and mitzvos. And the teshuvah process has to happen throughout the whole Jewish people. Especially, especially in the yeshiva world. The yeshiva world is not exempt from doing teshuvah. We all need to grow closer to Hashem and get a greater, clarified understanding of His Torah and His mitzvos. It's all of us. We all need to do teshuvah. So we see that they're at the end, and we'll talk about who the Erev Rav is in a second. So I just want to read one other pasuk from Parsha Vayishlach, and it's fascinating. It says, "V'tigashna hashafachos hena v'yaldehen v'sish tachavena." So it says. So this is. Let me see. This is from Parsha Vayishlach in Bereshis in Genesis. It's chapter 33. It's the Pesukim Vav and Zion. So it'd be verse 6 and 7. And it says that then the handmaidens came forward, they and their children, and they bowed down. So what is this talking about? So they're approaching Esau, and Esau's children as they go in history, they originally lived on Mount Seir, Har Seir, and it's like in the southern part of modern-day Jordan, around Petra. I believe that was possibly built by Esau's children. And then they migrated up to what's modern-day Lebanon. They may have even been the Phoenicians. And then they migrated to Italy. And then, the famous story how it was founded by Romulus and Remus, and we'll see about Romulus, Armilus, as he's called in Hebrew. And they founded the Roman Empire. But then now it's confusing because, well, the Roman Empire, the Eastern and the Western, the Eastern was the Byzantine and, the Roman Empire, and they're all supposedly dead and gone. But they actually went through 10 phases. We see in Sefer Daniel, in the book of Daniel, there was 10 phases of the Roman Empire. And I believe now, in our days, the might of the Eastern Roman Empire is possibly Russia, led by Vladimir Putin right now, who really people could call him like a dictator or, I don't know, president for life, whatever term you want to use. But in some ways, he may have the status almost of a melech, of a king, or a Moshe. And that's more of like a dictator. A melech kind of rules for the people. So I don't know exactly, what his relationship is exactly. I've never been to Russia, but he has a powerful status. And then in America, right? And then in America, that's the power of the Western Roman Empire, and we'll see how this all comes into play. So before the Jewish people fully return to the land of Israel, and that's also confusing because there's millions and millions of Jewish people in Israel already, and but there's still over, I believe, 6 million or so in the United States. So, and there's a lot in Europe, millions in Europe and South America, so and in Australia. So there, and really the Jews are, as the Torah predicted, as the Torah prophesied, as Hashem gave the nevuah, the prophecy, to the Nevi'im, the Jewish people are really spread out through all parts of the world right now. There's Jews everywhere now, especially Chabad. And then everyone's going to be gathered back and come back to Eretz Israel, to the land of Israel, with the coming Mashiach, and we'll see how that's going to start to work a little bit. So, so it says then they were approaching Esau, which means that we're going to have some interaction with Edom, with America and the Western powers of Europe and Russia, and they're all there. Like Russia is allied with Iran and Syria, and there's Russian troops in Syria, and they're moving through Ukraine. I don't know. It seems like maybe Russia is starting to take over Ukraine. And then the Vilna Gaon talked about something interesting about Russia eventually invading Constantinople, and he said that when the Russians come into Crimea, get ready. And we saw that during the Obama administration. Russia took over the Crimea region of Ukraine. And he says, when they invade Constantinople, Istanbul, modern-day Istanbul, put on your Shabbos clothes, don't take it off, Mashiach's coming. So the Vilna Gaon gave us a huge sign that is very, very pivotal event before the coming Mashiach. I don't know where he got that from in the Torah, unfortunately. It'll be interesting to see which psukim he was learning. Why would Russia invade Constantinople or Istanbul? Because it used to be Constantinople. It used to be the seat of the Byzantine Empire, of the Eastern Roman Empire. And if really Russia is truly the modern day inheritors of the Eastern Roman Empire, they want to go back to their original city and restore it to the glory. And what was started in Constantinople in the Council of Nicaea was actually the codification of what's Christianity. So, and then Putin, who is, I believe he's done a lot to restore, the Russian Orthodox churches, which started out of, the Greek Orthodox churches and the Russian Orthodox churches, and this all came from the Byzantine Empire. And I believe there would probably be a powerful motivation for him to overthrow Erdogan, who is, whatever you want to say, dictator, president for life, King Moshe, of modern day Turkey. And it would be a war there. It would be like that. It would be a modern day version of a battle of like the Crusaders and the jihadists, the Islamic jihadists, however you want to say it. So there could be a powerful motivation to see that eventually that Putin would invade Turkey. So it's not out of the question. So then we see first that the handmaidens come and they bow down. So according to Vilna Gaon, this is the Erev Rav, and they're going to bow down to the wishes of Edom. So then it says Vatigash Gam Leah v'Yaldehem Vayishlach. So then, right, Leah and her children come and they bow down. So we see that there's the power of the world is in Edom. The power in the world is in America, is in Russia. And they're kind of like, they kind of dictate in some ways like what's happening in the world. So then, V'achar nigash Yosef and Rachel v'yishtach. And then even Yosef and Rachel, Rachel, they bow down to Edom too. So Edom's in control. And we see here that Yosef, I think the Midrash says he was 6 years old at the time, but he's the only son that goes in front of his mother. All the rest of the children, all the rest of the Shvatim, the tribes, they were behind their mothers. But Yosef, interestingly enough, is in front of Rachel. Now, there's a famous pasuk in the Nevuah of Avadia that, let me see, so Yaakov is going to be the fire, and Yosef will be the flame, and then eventually Esav will be the kash, will be the straw. And in that prophecy is that Yosef will be the one that he will inherit the kingdom, he will inherit the empire from the powers of Edom, from the powers of the Western world. And eventually, when Mashiach ben Yosef becomes king, that he'll inherit the power of this kingdom. Also, according to Vilna Gaon, that Rachel represents the Talmidei Hachamim. It would mean that when Mashiach ben Yosef comes, that he's going to defend the great Torah scholars, and he's going to stand in front of them and protect them and start to elevate them. So some of you may be hearing this term Erev Rav for the first time, and wow, I never heard of them, and they're the leaders of the Jewish people. Who are they? Like, where do they come from? Where do we find them in the Torah? So it's interesting. So if we go to Parsha Bo in Sefer Shmos, in the book of Exodus, so if we go to chapter 12, verse 38, we see it says, V'gam Erev Rav ala itam, v'tzon v'bakar mikne kaved ma'od. So what does that mean? So the Erev Rav, it means great mixture, the mixed multitude. So they went up with them, meaning they went, when the Jewish people were brought, when Hashem saved us from Egypt, we went out of Egypt with Moshe Rabbeinu, with Moses, this group, this mixed multitude came with us. And then it mentions like the flock and the cattle and a great amount of livestock. And we see that here the Erev Rav are attached to great wealth. The Jewish people came out with great wealth. We came out of all the gold, silver, jewels, came out with great wealth of probably animal, livestock. We see also the Erev Rav are attached to this great wealth. They also came out with great wealth. So Rashi says the Erev Rav are Tyrovis Umos. They're kind of a mixture of the nations, meaning there was, at the time, Egypt was the great empire, and there was people from many nations that came to do business with the empire of Egypt. Just like we see now, like, America is very powerful. The financial capital of America is Wall Street, New York. People come from all over the world. Even the United Nations itself, is there in New York. And people come from all over the world, to interact with the great nations in the world. And he says, Shel Gerim. He says this great mixture of nations were converts. They wanted to join the Jewish people. They wanted to become Gerim. So the Zohar says something very different, which is interesting. And it's probably both of these ideas are correct. And the Erev Rav consists of all these different things. The Zohar says that the Erev Rav relates to degrees of different sorcerers. Okay, so if we're all muggles and we're not part of the wizarding world, what does that all mean? So here we're going to reveal a little bit of secrets most people don't know. Some whisper they're conspiracy theories, but these things are very real, and they're really kind of unknown to the average person. But possibly through thousands of years, definitely through hundreds of years of the Western Enlightenment, there's been these groups called, the secret societies. Just to give you an example, groups like the Freemasons, Rosicrucians, like Golden Dawn, all these groups. So what's fascinating also is like these groups had a huge effect on the founding of America. Many prominent of the early, I think George Washington himself, Benjamin Franklin, many others, the founders of America, a lot of them were in some of these secret societies. Now, what are these secret societies? So the big secret is they study Kishuv. They study magic. They study the history of magic. And they do these rituals. And these rituals are ceremonial magic. Some of them get into the darker arts, the dark arts. But the ceremonial magic is, they even throw a little bit of Kabbalah in there, which is very confusing for people because Kabbalah is really part of the Torah. And this probably comes, we'll see, it probably came from the Erev Rav and how they're all mixed together. And and the degrees, it's like there's different levels of a magician, of a sorcerer. As they get more and more learned in the magical arts, they go up by these things called degrees. And this is kind of unknown by the Muggle world at large, right? So, but these groups have been around for a long time. And Rashi's saying, the Zohar is saying that this Erev Rav, they also consisted of sorcerers, and ancient Egypt was renowned as kind of the center, or maybe the greatest, I don't know, the greatest wizards, sorcerers of all of history. And we see Paro, the Pharaoh, he was versed, and he had sorcerers in his royal court, and we see right in the Torah. When we get to Sefer Shmos, the book of Exodus, and we see that that he had magicians in his royal court, sorcerers, and they actually did, magical things, to counteract the kedusha, the light side, the kedusha of the Torah, the holiness of the Torah, and the dark spiritual forces of Kishuv. So that's one introduction to the Erev Rav. Now, they've been very harmful, but they've been with us throughout history, and a lot of people don't realize this, but one of the biggest harms they did initially was they were the ones that actually built the Chet HaEgel, the golden calf, and our problem was listening to them and following them. And there was two sorcerers that came out in the Erev Rav, and they were the sons of Lavan, who, as we said before, if you remember, it's been wow. But Lavan was the brother of Rivka, of Rebecca, and his daughter, was Rachel and Leah, Rachel and Leah. And he was a sorcerer, and he practiced, and it even says right in the Torah that he practiced divination. He saw through divination and teraphim, these magical items that he was using. And his sons came out, and they were instrumental in making the golden calf. And so when Moses is up on Har Sinai, Mount Sinai, and he's receiving the Torah from Hashem, and then when the golden calf was being worshipped, so Hashem says to Moshe, he says, "Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe." So Hashem says to Moshe, he says, "Lech raid, go down." And it means also go away from Shemayim. He's in the heavenly worlds. Leave the heavenly worlds, go down, lower yourself back to the physical earth. Ki shiches amcha, asher helecha, me'eretz Mitzrayim. Now Hashem says something fascinating. He says, go down for your nation. What do you mean your nation? The Jewish people were Hashem's nation. What do you mean your nation? Moshe's nation? Go down for your nation that you have brought up from Egypt has been corrupted or has destroyed. So what does that mean? So Rashi says, Shiches Amcha, your nation has become corrupted. And Rashi says it does not say the nation has become corrupted, rather your nation. And that's the Erev Rav, whom you accepted on your own and converted, but did not consult with me, and you said it is good that converts, the Gerim, will cling to the Shekhinah, the physical manifestation of Hashem, which is a difficult concept, the Shekhinah that rested on the Aron HaKodesh, the Ark of the Covenant, that was surrounded by the pillar of cloud by day, the pillar of fire by night. Very difficult concept, how an infinite being physically manifests. in an area. But they became corrupted and caused corruption, or you could read it maybe possibly as they became destroyers and caused destruction. By creating the golden calf, they created great destruction in the Jewish people and brought death back into the world, when death was now removed from the world. And it was just like Adam and Chava again. It was just like Adam and Eve. The sin of Adam and Eve of eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil had been corrected by standing at Mount Sinai and listening to Hashem, hearing Hashem, and receiving the Eser Adibros, the Ten Commandments, and it's all been corrected, and now it was destroyed again. And now it's corrupted again. Now death's back in the world. So, okay, so these are the Erev Rav, and they've caused great destruction in the Jewish people, and they've caused great Semitism because they do evil things, and the Jewish people are blamed for it. So, I don't know exactly, but I have like maybe some ideas, and we'll talk about their qualities, and we talk about maybe who them are. You know, some of the famous, possibly Erev Rav throughout history who have like really hurt the Jewish people and caused so much anti-Semitism. But we're going to see it's still up to us. Like, we have to remove these qualities from ourselves also, as we're going to see. So the Tikkunei HaZohar, it says there's 5 groups. And there's an acronym, or what's called in Hebrew, Roshei HaTevos, the first letter of each word, which forms an acronym. And it forms the acronym of Nega Ra, Nega Ra, which is like a Negaim is like a spiritual plague, Ra. And it's interesting too, the acronym for Erev Rav is Ayin Resh. And if you turn that around, it's Resh Ayin, which is Ra, which is evil. So it's like, and then which is Ayin Resh, was the son of Yehuda, and he was like not giving his seed, to Tamar to have children, and that whole Vera there, which is very evil. And he's saying that, and the Tikkunei HaZohar says there's 5 groups. He says that Nega Ra stands for the Nephilim, the Giborim, the Amalekim, the Rephaim, and the Anakim. So I guess it's Nega Ra. Touching evil. All right? Touch of evil, plague of evil. Okay, so who are these different groups? So the Vilna Gaon and Evan Shlema says something really fascinating. He explains who these groups are. And this is where we can really battle these forces. And we'll talk about Hamas soon. And there's a spiritual battle that we can really do. And he's saying the first group is the Nephilim. And the Nephilim seek physical immorality. They seek taivas, desires, physical desires. And this is all around. And this is a very dangerous thing that's all around. And where we see it in the Torah about the Nephilim is like these were these angels. There was these 2 angels, and one of the angels' names, interesting enough, was Azza and Azazel, or Azael. And Azza means strength, power, and you're never going to believe it. What does Azza mean when translated? How do we translate it into English? Gaza. Gaza in the Torah is called Azza, strength, and it's also the name of this fallen angel. And these angels complained to Hashem, why did you create people? And Hashem said to them, they were called the B'nai Elohim, children of God, children of the aspect of judgment and din of Hashem. And he says, it's not so easy. It's not so easy. They're in the physical world, surrounded by all these physical desires. You would sin as much as mankind if you went down there. And Hashem sent them down, and they did. And they sinned, and they produced the giants, the Anakim, who are another one of these groups. And they sinned. It says they sinned, they took wives, and they engaged in physical immorality. And I think they actually took wives from others. We'll see that's an aspect of Hamas. That was an aspect of Edom, aspect of Asa. So how can we fight this? So this is a powerful fight, and we're surrounded by it. With all the immorality, the erva in the movies and in the music and in the culture, and just the acceptability of physical immorality. And it has all aspects, and it relates to men in different ways. Like the Torah, there's a mitzvah that a man cannot have a relationship with a man because it cannot produce children. It's only for taiva, it's only for physical, pleasure, but it produces no children, so it only produces death. And so too, the same act, the son of Yehuda with Tamar, just wasting seed, zera livatala, is a great avera also, that just not, just fulfilling desire with not trying to fulfill the mitzvah of pru revu, not trying to fulfill the mitzvah of be fruitful and multiply, and all that's destructive, and that's the taivas of the Nephilim, and that's a personal battle that we all face, and I mean the Rosh Yeshivas, right? They often give advice to stay off the internet, to shemiras ha'ayin, to guard your eyes, to try to stay away from seeing, to not gaze long at women, even our own wives, but to not gaze at women that we're not married to not gaze at women, to not give into that taiva, and that's one way we can start to fight the battle against the Erev Rav ourselves. The Giborim are the next group, the powerful ones, the mighty. They seek fame and honor and great tithe in the world. So it says, the Vilna Gaon, he says, they'll build great synagogues and they'll donate the adornments of a Sefer Torah, but it's to get their name on the building, and to get their name on this Sefer Torah is donated by, and this taiva, this desire for fame and honor, it's rampant. Everyone wants to be, social media influencer, star, be famous. The desire for fame, the elevation of celebrities. So we see it's all around us, and right, and the fight against this is to just feel good about doing the right thing. We don't have to be famous. We don't have to be. We don't have to have millions of views, but learning Torah, doing mitzvos, feeling good about like gemilas chasadim, doing kindness for other people, feeling good about doing good. That's one like way to battle like the need for kavod, the need for fame and honor. Next group is one of the most dangerous, the Amalekim. Now this is scary because it says that there actually will be the leaders of the Jewish people during the exile, according to the Vilna Gaon. They steal from the poor, and this is where it gets very scary. And they use the clay Hamas. We'll talk about what Hamas is soon. They use the instruments, the tools of Hamas. And they've probably created Hamas, which is a very scary concept. The actual terrorist group, not only doing Hamas, and we'll talk about all what Hamas is, but they may have created the terrorist group Hamas. The Rephaim, kinds of like weakness. Their taiva is like they don't want to do kindness and tzedakah with those who learn Torah. They don't want to support Torah. They don't want to support the shuls and the yeshivas, and they don't want to give, tzedakah, charity, to help people learning Torah. And the final group is the Anakim, and these groups make fun. They make fun of the Torah scholars. They make fun of the wise men that know great amounts of the Torah. So how do we battle this? So, I mean, one way is through anava, instead of gaiva, instead of arrogance, to develop humility inside ourselves. One way to battle the Anakim, to battle the giants, and it's interesting, so they want to lower the giants of Torah and elevate themselves. And the battle, and how we can battle that, is to say the great words of the Chachamim, of the Torah scholars, and to publicize the great words of the Torah, and go against that. And we can develop a trait, that combats all this. All right, so there's a lot. So we're gonna wrap this up soon. There's so much to still talk about, but this is interesting. So the Vilna Gaon said this in Kol HaTorah, his Sefer Kol HaTorah, which is the voice of the dove singing when Mashiach comes back into the land of Israel. And it says this. It says the joining of Esav and Yishmael. Oh, one thing he said about the Erev Rav is that the Erev Rav is, okay, so he says, so Yishmael was the poselis of Yitzhak. The great quality of Yitzhak was strength and self-control. And the opposite of that is no control, the para Adam. And that's Yishmael. And that's the Arab nations. And the wildness. And we see the wildness of the inhabitants of Gaza and the wildness of the terrorist groups all over the world. And they demand jihad, conquering the whole world. No borders, conquering everything. And then the poselis of, I think it's the poselis of Abraham and Yitzhak. But then the poselis of Esav, that's the poselis, I think, of Yitzhak. And Yishmael was the poselis of Abraham. The opposite of kindness is cruelty. And we see it in the terrorist groups, cruelty. And the opposite of, the Kol Yaakov is just fighting against Hashem, Chas v'shalom, fighting against the Torah. Esav, the enlightenment. We see it in the enlightenment. But the Rambam did say that there is an important reason for Islam, for Christianity and Islam. The religion started from Esav's children, Christianity, and the religion started from Yishmael's children, Islam, and they've kind of created, in some sense, their own Torah instead of following the Torah. But the Rambam says they're playing an important mission because they're not intentionally trying to glorify yet Hashem in the world, but they're starting to get closer and closer, and they have more of a conception of Hashem. And they're teaching a lot of the concepts in the Torah, and they're preparing the world for when Mashiach finally comes, the world will listen. They'll know some of these things that Mashiach's talking about. They'll know some of the Torah concepts. And it's getting the world closer and closer to these days where we want to see the days of world peace, real true peace. Not global war that we seem to be facing, right? So then it says, the joining of Esav and Yishmael is the result of Armilus. And that's the name of Romulus, right, who was one of the founders of Rome. And it says, the Vilna Gaon says, that this is actually the Sar. This is the ministering angel of the Erev Rav. Every nation has a special malach attached to it, who are able to destroy the Jewish people in the entire world. May Hashem have mercy, have rachamim on us. The main drive of the Erev Rav is to unify Esav and Yishmael and to separate the two Mashiachs, to separate Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David. So we see any group that tries to bring Edom and Yishmael together, and we've seen it in our days, in this current war, and it's scary. But we saw that the Biden administration freed up tens of billions of dollars to go to Iran, and freed up $6 billion right before the attack. But then, after this horrible attack, after the world saw these Nazi atrocities, Biden ran to give $100 million humanitarian aid to Gaza. The people that were cheering the massacre and destruction, the slaughter of the Jews. I'm not saying everyone, but in polls recently, it's scary how many people in the upwards of 70s and 80% approval of just murder and immorality and the violation of women. Just completely disturbing. And this is a joining of Esav and Yishmael. And I think Hashem's going to tear it all apart. And I think we're on the verge of the war between Edom and Paras, the war between America and Iran. Because Hashem's not going to let this, it's not going to let the forces of Esav and Yishmael join with the Erev Rav to destroy the Jewish people. It's going to be scary. So therefore, our main work in battle is to break and remove the strength of the Erev Rav from the Jewish people. The Erev Rav is our greatest enemy and works only through deception and in roundabout ways. So the war against the Erev Rav is the most difficult and bitterest of all, and we must strengthen ourselves for this war. And anyone who does not participate in the battle against the Erev Rav becomes a partner with the Erev Rav and is better off having not been born. Scary, right? So, I don't know. We can't actually, it's not perfectly clear exactly who the Erev Rav is. And it's a very confusing time because we have this middle group of the Amei Haaretz Tovim. We have all the good Jewish people. And they're starting to wake up. So we have a lot of Jewish people that have been kind of distant from the Torah. And they're starting to wake up. And, they're getting interested in Torah and mitzvos and joining, with Klal Yisrael. And it's an awakening. And then we have see someone, those who, so the qualities, it said, the qualities are Bittul Torah, and that's scary. So it's like any excuse not to learn Torah. And we're in a world of distractions. And with the internet, any movie, any TV show, any song, any play, any book, it's all at everyone's fingertips. It's just a vast Eitz Das Tovara, tree of knowledge of good and evil. So there's a vast amount to consume a person's time right now. Work's brutal. Corporations, people working incredible amount of hours, and there's so much financial pressure with the inflation. So there's a lot of pressure, and there's plenty of ways to bittul Torah, to not learn Torah, especially Jewish people. All of us have grown up in public school, and the Torah is a little foreign from us, and we're not used to learning Torah every day. So that's tough. But then we have those in the Erev Rav trying to discourage people from learning Torah. That's one of the signs. And then those who hate Hashem, those who want to throw off the rule of Hashem. So this is where it gets tricky, because there's some Jewish people that aren't so familiar with the Torah, and they're not really trying to throw off, Hashem's rule. They just don't know so much sometimes of the halacha and the Torah, and these concepts seem foreign. So those Jewish people starting to wake up. But you have very secretive, we talked about the secret societies and all that influence, but you have those trying to discourage people and rise. And why do you see in America, why is the media always rising up the satanic temple? Really? I mean, these people are literally saying they worship the Satan, the Yetzer Hara. They worship evil. It's why are they always in the news? Who cares? There's a stupid group of Satanists, because there's this scary part of the Erev Rav, and the scarier parts, Amalekim, in Edom, in Yishmael, and there's going to be a great awakening in all the nations of the world when Mashiach comes. All the world's going to see that everyone is the children of this one infinite being. Everyone's a child of Hashem. We're all connected. But we have those forces trying to separate us and cause everyone to fight and hate each other. And that's what we have to fight against. So we saw the five taivas, the five desires of the different groups of the Erev Rav. And right now, the personal battle, the fight against Hamas. Oh, what does Hamas mean? So I forgot about the Hamas. And it's scary how the world's embraced them. How could I forget about Hamas? So Hamas, right, it says, Parsha Noah, that the world, the land, Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, was filled with Hamas, right? And Hashem wanted to destroy the world because of Hamas. And what's Hamas? Ibn Ezra says it means taking wives by force. We saw this disgusting violation, the women, the Jewish women, and the world is silent, right? And the Or HaChaim says it's the ultimate in wickedness. It's stealing, robbery by force. And we see the children of Yishmael, they claim the land's ours. They call it the occupation. They say, from the river to the sea, it will all be theirs. When did Hashem promise the children of Yishmael? He gave them vast land in Arabia. There's 22, I think, surrounding Muslim countries. That's not enough. They need the whole world. They want the jihad on the whole world. It's immorality. It's physical immorality in all its forms. They claim to be religious. Hashem said not to kill, not to steal. Are they following Hashem? What God are they following? Not to kill. Murder is Hamas, according to the Or HaChaim. And idolatry. So you say, but they claim they follow God. They're not. What God do they worship? They turn their backs on the Temple Mount. They turn their backs on the holiest place in the world, where the Beis HaMikdash stood, and Bezrat Hashem, the third Beis HaMikdash, will be rebuilt. They turn their backs on it, and they pray to a rock in the Meccan desert. What are they praying to? Hashem hates Hamas, and they name themselves Hamas. Besides the physical fight that the IDF needs to fight, and Bezrat Hashem, they will destroy Hamas as much as possible. And I don't know what's happening with all that. But our personal fight is fighting against these qualities in ourselves, removing these bad midos, these bad character traits, and that's our fight right now. Removing it from ourselves. Removing all these qualities, Hamas, from ourselves. Removing these qualities of the Erev Rav from ourselves. And that that can hasten the coming of Mashiach. And then when Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David get here, then the real war will begin against these groups. But we need constantly to keep, tefillah, that all the hostages are rescued from Gaza. Not some, all the hostages. There was even a violation today of the ceasefire, and there was detonations, and the Israeli soldiers were fighting back. But we have to pray that all the hostages are saved. And it may be that the Israeli army has to go back to war. They have to. I mean, to leave Hamas, to leave destroyers next to you, it's a fantasy. You can't keep living like this. But B'ezrat Hashem, we're very close. And we're in Parsha Vayishlach. And maybe all these events are unfolding. We're very close to seeing the coming of Mashiach ben Yosef. And then Mashiach ben Yosef will fight, I believe, against the Erev Rav, remove the Erev Rav from the Jewish people, and that will free Mashiach ben David to come. All right, so I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you back again soon on Sweet and Good Torah.